What's up, Jets fans? Welcome to the latest edition of Jets Latest, where you get the latest on the Jets, Jets. I'm your host, the spitting statistician, Dane Martinez, and today we continue to focus on the NFL draft. You know, that kind of initial wave of free agency has kind of quieted down. I've been talking about how now there's a surplus of veterans at a number of positions that may come on at, veteran minimum contracts later on down the road, but we really need to focus on the draft. And quite frankly, yesterday, I was a little bit worried because of the signings of Diggs and Shador Sanders and how that could have messed up the draft board for the Jets at number 7. But there is good news, and I want to kind of once again crystallize what we should be hoping for as Jets fans. Remember, I believe that the Jets are going to take an offensive lineman at number 7, right? Either Membu, who would be the hope out of Missouri, or Will Campbell out of LSU, who would absolutely be fine. There's also the idea, a lot of people are talking about Tyler Warren, the Penn State tight end, which is possible, but I personally want to build from the inside out and think offensive line is the primary position. For that to be able to be the case, when the Jets pick at 7 to have their choice of Membo and Campbell, what we need is the 6 teams in front of them to not draft an offensive lineman, to keep these targets for us on the draft board. And quite frankly, I thought the Giants were going to be drafting Shador Sanders, right? With Jameis Winston as the bridge quarterback. But then when they signed Russell Wilson also, it made me think, maybe they are not taking him and opening up the door for one of these teams to maybe take an offensive lineman, move everybody up the draft board. However, I'm a little bit surprised, but ESPN's Adam Schefter had this to say, even though the Giants have signed Russell Wilson and have taken Jameis Winston in free agency already. He said, I still think even with Russ and Jameis, the Giants may take Sanders at 3 overall. They have struggled at that spot and will do everything possible to address it. I don't care who they add if that is the guy they believe in. I think that's interesting. You see a picture here of also Shador Sanders was wearing these giant cleats for his bowl game at Colorado. The Giants had people scouting all the Colorado games. There's even video, remember the Heisman Trophy presentation in December where Travis Hunter won the Heisman. There's video of outside Shador Sanders throwing to Malik Neighbors. So there are still a lot of dots to connect between Shador Sanders and the New York Giants. We want that to happen. We want the Giants to still draft Shador Sanders number 3 so that the offensive linemen are still on the table. Also, I told you about Stephon Diggs signing with the Patriots and how that might have meant that maybe they don't need that wide receiver. Maybe there was a chance for Ted McMillan. Maybe there was a chance now that they would go offensive lineman. Interestingly enough, check out this quote from Patriots GM Elliott Wolf. He says the team will take the quote-unquote best player available at number 4 in next month's draft. I think he could be talking about Travis Hunter. Okay, the two-way stud Heisman Trophy winner out of Colorado. That is, again, good news for us because if the Patriots don't take an offensive lineman, that means they could both still be there for our Jets at number 7 overall. Here's the other thing. You may have heard of Ashton Jeanty, the stud running back out of Boise State, who many people thought could have won the Heisman. I thought he could have. He had one of the best running back seasons in college football history. He had his pro day yesterday. And here's the deal. All 32 teams were there in attendance to get their eyes on Ashton Jeanty. A lot of mock drafts have the Dallas Cowboys taking Jeanty at 12 overall. But one thing I think is possible that we as Jet fans need to hope for is that the Vegas Raiders take Jeanty at number 6. Again, that would be another non-offensive lineman, one of the teams take ahead of us that could kind of save the offensive lineman there for us at number 7 overall. This is what we need to have happen. All the teams ahead of us to not take our targets, most likely the offensive linemen. People have also been talking about Mason Graham potentially out of Michigan in the defensive line. And the defensive line is maybe still an area of need for the New York Jets. Remember, they signed Cowart, they signed Nandi, and I think that's okay, but maybe they will still look to add. So I don't think it's going to happen at number 7 because I think Graham is going to be gone, but I did want to take a look at some of the other prospects that are out there in the draft that could be had maybe in rounds 2 and 3. Personally, I think they're going to go pass catcher at 2 and 3, a wide receiver, a tight end. We have talked about some of these guys on previous editions of Jets Latest, but I also want to give you the thumbnail sketch on some of the defensive linemen that could be out there, could be targets for the Jets at number 42 overall early in the second round, or number 73 overall early in the third round. The first is a guy named Walter Nolan out of Ole Miss, 6'4", 296. Now, he is likely going to be drafted late in the first round, but there is a chance that he could fall a little bit. There is a chance that if the Jets really like him, they could trade up a little bit. He was a first-team All-American with 6.5 sacks, 14 tackles for loss, and he was an Outland Trophy finalist, which is the award in college football that goes to the best defensive lineman. So absolutely one of the best defensive linemen in the nation. He's known as really twitchy, really quick with his get off, and he can pressure the pocket. Only thing is, I don't think he's going to be there. There are some guys who may be there, though, at number 42 early in the second round. If the Jets don't like the wideouts that are there, think they can wait for the tight end, like a Mason Taylor, who I've talked about out of LSU. Tyleik Williams out of Ohio State is someone to note. He's 6'3", 334 pounds, okay? 18 tackles for loss, 5.5 sacks over the last 2 years for Ohio State, obviously playing in big-time games. He is a run stopper, of course, right? At 334 pounds, that's kind of what we need. That's what we were looking for when we signed Nandi. Here's the thing, though. He got injured at the Ohio State Pro Day. He went down while running his 40. It doesn't seem to be huge. It doesn't seem to be too serious. He did come back out and watch, but at 334 and 6'3" out of Ohio State, Tyleik Williams is a name to watch who could be available at the start of round 2. Another guy, Darius Alexander out of Toledo. He's 6'4", 305 pounds, second team all-conference, 7.5 tackles for loss, 3.5 sacks. He also had a pick 6 in their bowl game at Toledo, so clearly has some athleticism there. He has length, which is what you also need in a defensive lineman. Okay, long arms, can stay off blocks. That's a name to look for. Another name out of Texas would be Alfred Collins. He's 6'5", 332. He is a second-team All-American, one of the best defensive linemen in the country, and they call him kind of a specimen, an A-plus body for the position at 6'5", 332, even bigger, than Tyleik Williams, right? Because he has 2 inches on him, okay? This guy also has kind of, he doesn't really flash, but he does have the body for it. He does have lateral quickness, which is good if teams are trying to run in those A gaps. So he is another name of note. 2 more I want to give you that may be more third round options for the Jets. One is TJ Sanders out of South Carolina. Good acceleration. He's been known to have played in a lot of different alignments. So he played in nose tackle, he played in the 4 technique, and he played DN. 6'4", 297 pounds. So shy of that 300-pound mark, which we really want as a run stuffer. Remember, Quinn Williams already as our defensive lineman who's going to be able to get pressure. We want a bigger body, a nose tackle. That's why the 332 Alfred Collins, that's why the 334 Tyleik Williams really comes into play for us, in my opinion. One other name of note is Omar Norman Lott. He played at Tennessee. Again, a little bit smaller, a little bit undersized for the defensive line position. He's only 290 pounds, 6'2". It's funny you say only 290 pounds and 6'2", but still not exactly the kind of run plugging stopper in the middle to pair with Quinnen Williams, right? He did have 4 sacks, but he's also already 23 years old. So I don't know if he's going to be the perfect fit there, but those are some of the guys that you could hear if the Jets don't like the wide out or tight end options or lineman options, O-line options in rounds 2 and 3. I think offensive line round 1. I think rounds 2 and 3, pass catcher is the priority. But if they don't like how the board shakes out or they think they can wait for some of their targets there, defensive line could be one to go with. And those are some names. Quite frankly, I think Tyleik Williams, I think Darius Alexander, and I think Alfred Collins out of Texas would be nice fits if they want to go that route. One other thing of note, I have been telling you guys the idea that you got to follow the money. You got to see who we are signing, who we're talking to, who we're visiting with in free agency as more clues for the draft. Well, there are reports that the Jets may be interested in former Colts tight end Mo Alley Cox. That's why we say Mo Alley, Mo Problems, right? He's 31 years old, 7-year vet, all with Indianapolis. He is durable, played all 17 games for the Colts in the last 4 years in a row, but he is more of a blocking tight end, not necessarily a pass catching tight end. He's only had 30 catches or more once in his career, and that was back in 2020. I don't necessarily think this is really an option for them. I don't necessarily think that this is a priority for the Jets. However, I bring this up because if in the next week or so we hear that Mo Alley Cox is visiting or somehow has signed with the Jets, that will be another clear signal that Tyler Warren is not the pick at number 7, right? Because they already have Ruckert. They already signed Stone Smart. If they go and add another tight end, that would make 3 in the tight end room, and there would not really be another room, at least for a high-end tight end in the draft. So keep an eye out on that. I don't think it's going to happen. I don't want it to happen, quite frankly. But when you hear the news at the top of the draft around guys like Shedeur Sanders, around guys like Tet McMillan, Travis Hunter, Mason Graham. Remember, if the 6 teams above us do not take an offensive lineman, that leaves our kind of preferred options still available to draft and on the table. And remember, that is the offensive line with Membu out of Missouri or Will Campbell out of LSU. We'll see what happens. There will obviously be more news, but here's the thing. Right before the draft, it is smoke screen season. Teams are not really kind of showing their cards and maybe putting out false things to throw people off the scent. One thing I know, we will be here on Jets Latest to try to sift through it all and see if we can, get our at least preferred approach moving forward, because we've got 3 picks in the top 75 and we are looking to continue to add to a new regime and a new culture with Aaron Glenn and Darren Moji. That'll do it for this episode of Jets Latest. Remember, please like this video, subscribe to the channel. Feel free to hit me up in the comments or on social media. I am on X at Spittin' Speeds. And if you want to hear more from me, remember, I am the host over on SiriusXM of the FTN Fantasy Show. We do all sorts of great content there, talking about our tools, talking about our rankings, trying to help you win your fantasy leagues, win that cash. And we talk a lot of fantasy baseball with opening day out here and the baseball season upon us as well. That'll do it for this episode of Jets Latest. I will be back tomorrow, as always, giving you that content on the JETS Jets. Until next time, we'll see you tomorrow. We out of here. Peace.